So I'll kick off with the first question. Please feel free, any of you, to jump in and answer the question. And welcome, David. I'm not sure if anyone heard your introduction, but David Taylor is head of access and participation at ULaw, and you recently did a talk with the BAME advocates, which was very insightful. But perfect. If I start with the first question we received this from Sophie, and she asked, as an ally, how do I make myself more approachable to people who identify as LGBTQ+, and what can I do to help? Does anyone want to start with that?
I'm happy to kick this off.
Perfect.
So one thing that springs to mind for me, and it's such a simple thing, is actually having a badge that you can wear. I believe you can get loads of different pin badges that show that you're an ally. So having an ally badge on a lanyard or on your person somewhere is a really good idea.
I think another good thing to do is just, if you meet someone for the first time, feel free to use your own pronouns when you introduce yourself. And generally just try and use inclusive language as much as possible. I think, to be honest with you, to be a good ally, and I think everyone else will have their own takes on this, but I think a good place to start is to educate yourself on some of the key issues. This is the second part of your question of what you can do to help, is to educate yourself on some of the key issues of the day, racism, trans rights. Those are all good places to start, and just really be able to speak intelligently about them, have opinions about them, and also have some thoughts on how to amplify marginalized voices.
I think that's great. I think something that sorry, Karen, I was going to say, I think something that we've started doing at ULaw, as you touched upon, Jay, is the pronouns in our emails. Something that's quite small, but can avoid that awkward question or assuming someone has a pronoun. But Karen, sorry, you was going to say something.
No, I was going to say, it goes back to what I said about maybe going to networking groups and actually going to talks as well, because you actually meet a diverse group of people who will educate you and will tell you how you can support them. And I think, actually going into the community and working with them, socializing with the community makes it far better than having what used to really worry me. There was pigeonholes, and in university particularly, you would have your sports, you'd have your females, you'd have the minority groups. I want to break that down a bit. There are reasons to have minority groups and panels, of course there is, but there are times where we should come together and embrace and discuss, and I don't think that we're doing enough of that. So I think it would be great to welcome more people in to talk.
No, I agree. Open conversation is the best way forward. Perfect. So on to our second question that we have. It is, did you ever feel uncomfortable putting your sexual orientation on a job application? And maybe Karen, as an employer, is it something that would ever be something that you would expect to see even?
Do you know what? Actually, the SRA sends us out a diversity form that we have to complete for all of our staff every year. And I have to declare male, female, white or African-American, gay, straight, bisexual. Why? Because they're saying it's obviously for their figures, for them to show how diverse people. And yeah, okay, for large law firms, maybe they do need to break that down. But I shouldn't be having to ask my team that. I don't think, we're a small firm, so we know each other very well, but I don't think that people should be encouraged to have to come out to their boss if they don't wish to. So whilst I understand that we're trying to carry our figures forwards to improve, and that it's also not mandatory, but if someone puts something in anonymous, they then feel even more worried. So I think we do need to change how we approach these things. To me, to be honest, I don't ask for any of that. You send me your CV, we have a meeting. I'm not interested in any of that. But I do know for the larger firms, they've got to report upon it. We've got to somehow work out how to gather the data without putting it on people to have to disclose it the way they're asking at the moment.
And for Emma and Jay, is this anything that you're concerned about sort of moving forward? Do you feel it's important that you would put it on a application? Well, and would you advise anyone to do it as such?
So I'm happy to jump in. Look, I don't actually put my sexual orientation or gender identity or any of that stuff on a job application. But what I do is I note that I speak at LGBT events, I mentor LGBT colleagues on my CV. I think that's important to include because number one, it signals that I'm LGBT, which I think I find valuable because frankly, I wouldn't want to work at a place that that doesn't accept that. And I'm sure there are places like that still. And I don't think that approach gives out too much personal information that you wouldn't necessarily want to share. Like I wouldn't want to just write lesbian across the title of my CV, but I do think it's helpful really to indicate if you're comfortable doing so that you have LGBT identity.
Yeah, I know that there's been I've done quite a few interviews with people, Scott Halliday being one of them, and he always says, if you feel comfortable to put it on, but also if you don't, it's not going to hold you back. And I quite like Emma's suggestion actually of, if you know that you speak at these events or you do things for the LGBTQ plus community, either way, either shows you're an ally or you're part of the family. So whichever way, and then if the firm doesn't want you based on that, and this is what Scott always says, if the firm doesn't want you based on the fact that you've put your sexual orientation down, or noted that you speak at LGBTQ plus events, you don't really want to work there anyway because they're not inclusive. They're not the right fit for you.
Yeah.
I suppose it's also difficult. I mean, we put ourselves out there that we're an equality employer. I mean, we specialise in LGBTQ rights, so we really want people to apply to us. But even during my interviews, I know people have hidden their sexuality, when actually for me it's a plus. If you're a gay lawyer, it's fantastic for me. So I'm actually the opposite. But I've noticed they've still hidden that. They've still been nervous. And when I've asked them after I've employed them, they generally don't know how they're perceived. They're generally nervous. And I think that is still the legal sector. And if you want to go to one of the bigger companies, you don't know who you're going to meet. So the policy might be one way, their approach might be another. There is still a lot of anxiety out there, and I can feel that. So I think you just have to go into an interview and be yourself. And if you're comfortable, great. But I do understand why you might want to maintain, you might not want to discuss that, why should you? So I think it's a fine balance, and it is difficult still. I do believe that.
Yeah, there's absolutely nothing that says you have to do that. And I think that's important to keep in mind as well. You don't need to put that signal of any sort.
And I think that's a great transition into our third question, actually, which is from Ollie. And he's asked, how do you manage insensitive questions from someone who hasn't intentionally meant to offend you? So as you said, Karen, this may happen accidentally in a workplace. And how would you recommend to sort of deal with this?
I mean, everything's about understanding and speaking to people. And, if you're confident enough to stop them and say, look, please, that was not appropriate, and correct them, that's fine. And if you're not, go and speak to a member of management or go and speak to somebody you feel comfortable to have that conversation with. Don't let it sit there and brood, because you don't even know if that person even understood they've offended you. We've had some cases where there's been awful scenarios, really awful scenarios where it has been harassment. But then eventually, after like the 7th episode, they've gone to speak to the manager. The manager wasn't even aware of it. It was dealt with very efficiently. So just because one person perhaps says something, even if it's genuine, you don't assume that the whole organization's like that or the whole team's like that. And I think that's a big problem as well. Just because you're nervous, if one person upsets you, do not assume that everyone's the same. So you're right. If you've got the confidence, talk to them. If not, find someone. There's always someone you can trust. Yeah,
and I'd like to just add to that, if it's once and it's not overtly phobic, give them the benefit of the doubt, because it's all too easy to just beat people down, to say, why are you being homophobic? Why are you being transphobic? Why are you being biphobic? when actually what it could be is just a lack of education or a lack of understanding around an issue. So always give them the benefit of the doubt. If it is persistent or it is overtly sus, I suppose you could say, then if you feel comfortable, be polite about it as well. Be, assertive in how you say it, but not rude. If you don't, and this is another great thing probably about being quite junior at things, is you have that line manager, you have that supervisor you can go to. Even if you're quite senior, I suppose there's still people you can go to and say, look, this happened, would you mind helping me out with this? So that would be my take on that.
You also have to be very careful with the employment rights now as well, because it's not just if you're offended or harassed, it's how it's perceived by other people. So you might actually think it's funny and move on, but then other people are offended. So actually nipping that behaviour in the bud is very important for the employer, for people around you, for you. So I think we also have to have a bit of social conscious about, if it's genuinely harassment, we have to sort it out. But if it genuinely is a misunderstanding, let's just take them aside and clarify, because I might not be offended, but they might be. And then it escalates. It will always escalate if somebody doesn't have polite chat. So I think we just have to have the confidence to have the conversation about anything, whether it's a disability, whether it's gender, whether it's LGBTQ. We have to just talk.
Yeah, and if you're an ally, don't feel like you can't say something. If you think that was a bit out of order, the likelihood is the person that it was directed to also thinks that.
Perfect. Our fourth question probably feels a little bit more directed towards David and Jay, as they are a part of ULaw. But what support is there at ULaw and for LGBTQ plus students, and how do they access them? And that was from Chris. But please, Karen and Emma, follow on with sort of support that you've seen at firms as well.
So personally at ULaw, there's the Student Association. So there's your representative, which happens to be me at the moment. So there's me. Your personal tutor. Never underestimate how even another tutor, if you've gone to a workshop and a tutor's really clicked with you, never underestimate how happy they will be to help you. So there's tutors, there's me, there's also the welfare service on every campus. There's the mental health services, there's the counselling services. But another person, I won't name names, but there's people out there at ULaw that I wouldn't have come across unless I put myself in this position. And actually they've become some of my trusted people that I will go to if I need help. So never underestimate the people that are around you. Don't always look where the official line's going. If there's someone there that you like and you think you can talk to, go to them.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yeah.
Oh, good. I know you can't see me, can you? I don't think. I totally agree. I think going to places, going to the people that you trust, and making sure that you're comfortable, and everybody's at different stages in understanding their own sexuality, their own identity, and you can have that sudden rush of wanting to tell the world and share it with everybody, but while you're doing that, I think Jay's right in make sure you've got people you can trust and that have got your best interests in mind, because it can be quite a euphoric feeling sometimes coming out, and you just want to tell the world, and as you tell more people it often feels easier, but also be just that little bit guarded that not everybody was as maybe is understanding, I think. And I think, Jay, you gave a really good sort of sell of what you do and what the university is now involved in. I think also from a staff point of view, I would say that there are those similar sort of people you can talk to. I think that's really important. Yeah, and it's amazing how far we have come in quite a short space of time, really.
And I'd just like to add, you know, when you start your new career, there's going to be people around you that are in the same position as you. They don't have to be part of the community to understand. So, you know, please do talk to everyone around you that you feel comfortable with, you know, and in jobs and organizations, you'll have someone that does what Jay does, you know, so when you are a trainee, they'll have panels, they'll have mentors, and, you know, become part of a networking group. And really don't isolate yourself, you know, talk to people. And I think, one of the reasons I really, really want to be on here rather than putting on one of my LGBTQ lawyers is to show you that I don't have to be gay to actually be able to show you compassion, rights, normality, professionalism. I'm here to support. I am a real ally. I've been working on this for a very long time. So if I was at university and I saw it, I would speak out. If you were upset, I'd be there for you. So don't assume your colleagues are not understanding you, perhaps because they're slightly different. I know things are different, but they're all going to have their own sort of issues. So please do not be isolated. And I think particularly with the pandemic at the moment, I'm seeing a lot of well-being issues. Talk to people you trust. Doesn't matter if they have the same issue, but they'll have an issue somewhere.
Yeah, I totally agree, Karen, and what you were saying about being straight and you know, coming forward and speaking at different events. My partner's you know, he's a primary school teacher, and he goes to the LGBTQ conferences, union organised conferences, and he's often said, you know, why can't one of my straight colleagues go along? They actually need to learn. They've got a lot more to learn, and would actually get a lot more from it than him going and sort of then taking that back to school. You know, so I do totally think that that position is really useful.
I mean, I'm really excited that in September last year that they made LGBT studies mandatory in school. And it didn't go down very well with a lot of people, but I'm really quite interested. So my 9-year-old is teaching a few Asian children about surrogacy, what transgender means. That shouldn't be for him to teach, but they don't know, the parents don't know. I'm loving it because finally I'm getting them on board that they have to understand this. I mean, you know, it's not, you know, we watch programs where they hide it, where books are taken away. I mean, you know, we're in the day and age now. Why are we not having these open conversations? My son knows all of these things. Why is he having to educate them?
Yeah, my son does that as well. He's very often having to point out that you know, when they ask him if he's got, where's his mummy, you know, I've got two daddies and a tummy mummy, you know, and that just stops the conversation, sort of thing. So, you know, yeah.
I like that. I've not heard that. Tummy mummy. I'm going to use it in my blog next week.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
Use that in my family law exam. Who knows?
Got a bit of everything, best of both worlds. No, perfect. So on to our 6th question that we've received from Carrie is, despite some efforts, law firms have still a way to go in achieving diversity and inclusion. But what more do you think firms need to do in order to achieve diversity and inclusion? And how can they do this in a genuine bid to better their firm and sort of the diversity and inclusion within their staff, rather than it just coming across like they're ticking a box? So did anyone want to jump on this, Karen? I know you have your own firm, so you've probably got some...
You know what? It horrifies me what still goes on, because obviously I sue a couple of law firms and I hire people from other law firms. And, you know, people from outside of London are horrified that, you know, discrimination still takes place. I am not going to name names, but there was one large firm in London that were absolutely selling and promoting how good they were at breaking down bias. They'd hired 3 people at £42,000 per annum to meet with the partners to dish out the work to their associates. So there was no unconscious bias, because they were finding there was discrimination between who the partners were giving the work to. So we're not going to deal with the problem. We're not going to tackle the racism, the genderism, the homophobia. We're going to put a barrier there and pay for it. But they're very proud of themselves. For me, I was horrified. I absolutely was horrified. It's not about the figures that match up to the equality. It's not about the policies. I find a lot of it fake. It's like, we're going to promote to the community. We're going to marry up to the figures we need. We want sincerity. We want the lawyers going to the networking groups and getting to know the community. We want them to actually work and pioneer genuinely for people. There's a lot of people I've met that have joined companies because they say they're LGBT friendly, they've joined the panels, and then they've been horrifically discriminated against and really surprised. We need to stop forcing firms to produce fake figures and fake policy and fake marketing. They have to mean it. And we know when you go into the community, we talk, we know who's right and wrong. But actually the rest of the straight world go, wow, look at them, they spent £10 million with Stonewalls. That's not enough. It's got to be genuine. And we don't bitch and moan enough about who's fake. So I think we just need to talk honestly a bit more.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, to be honest, I think we take a step back a bit. The simple answer is we need to promote more diverse people, more LGBT people to partnership. That's really that's the answer right there. That's the deserve. We'll eventually get there if we do that. But I think a big part of it too is that diversity is a marketing aid, but it's not necessarily seen as being tremendously valuable in and of itself. It's not really seen as being valuable to the bottom line. If you look at law firms generally, they move quite slowly. They're still lagging massively on promotion and retention of women. So I think LGBT is sort of certainly a step behind that in terms of where we need to get to. But hopefully there are some initiatives by clients. Coca-Cola recently had a Dear External Counsel letter demanding greater diversity. That's happened a few times. There's been a few open letters. I know some investment banks that are quite keen on seeing diverse teams, not just at the partner level, but kind of all throughout the associates. So if you have a team servicing this bank on a particular project, they actually do want to meet everyone on the team, and that needs to include women, that needs to include people of color, that needs to include LGBT people. So I think the tick box approach isn't working, business as usual isn't working, but until we get diverse, it's almost like a chicken and egg. We need to get more people diverse people into management, but in order to have diverse people in management, you need to get them there first. So I think it's tremendously challenging.
I think when you're looking for law firms or barristers' chambers even, and if you're specifically looking for somewhere that is diverse, a lot of places, if it's a ticky box, they'll have something at the bottom of their website that might say Stonewall employer. That's great. But is it actually there for the right reasons, or is it there as a badge? So what I do when I look at law firms is I actually go and have a look at their people. Yes, if you go on Irwin Mitchell, you could be scrolling for ages because there's thousands of them. But other law firms, you can get a sense of how diverse that place is and whether it is just a badge. So if you look at the senior partners, or the QCs that are at the chambers, you'll be able to get a sense for what it's like at that place. And a lot of places now as well on their websites have little bios of their staff, and look for keywords that stick out to you like LGBTQ+, and think, right, if this associate has helped set up the LGBT lawyers division, then this place must be quite inclusive, or doesn't really care about inclusivity because they're all as good as each other. And it's not something that they're just striving to put out there.
Jay, I agree with you, but I also hope that the generation we're talking to won't just choose firms that have this stamp and label, because I want you to go into firms that don't even know that they're not doing that and change them and do it from within. It may be that they're not homophobic at all. They just don't know that they have to promote the issue. They just don't know. They're not aware of it. You know, so again, I think we've got to be very careful we don't put people off and only go one way or the other either, because there's some wonderful firms out there, there's some wonderful companies. And then they go, what does LGBT on your website mean, Karen? And I've explained, oh, really? And they just genuinely don't know. And I said, well, how many people have you got working for you? Oh, thousands. They haven't even put it on their website. So I think I agree with you, Jay, wholeheartedly. And I do hate people that buy labels as well. I just think we just got to be very juggle
Yeah,
it
no,
all.
I agree. You know, there's a limit to how far you can look past it.
Yeah.
I think, you know, not all places will put it on there because, you know, they might not be fighting for that inclusivity badge because everybody to them is equal, so they don't feel the need to put it on.
I agree, and I think if they, as Emma said, it's important to have diversity within a workplace, but I also imagine to have it where they feel safe, to be able to talk openly within a workplace is key as well. Moving on to our next question is from Claire, and Jay, you briefly touched upon this, but some of my peers do not see the point in sharing your pronouns. How do I explain to them the importance of this?
So I think one thing is they might not be comfortable with sharing their pronouns. It might not be that they don't see why it's important. It might be because they don't feel comfortable with it, or they don't know themselves. And they could be going through things. So there's that to bear in mind. I suppose the way that you could really point it out is by saying not everybody does define as gendered pronouns. And maybe give them some examples, like Sam Smith is they, them. And just really point out that even though it doesn't seem like a big thing, to some people it might be. A bit like the badge at the bottom of a page that says they're a Stonewall employer. To some people might actually think that relaxes me a bit because I know that they look at Stonewall's values.
Yeah, I think I agree, Jay. It's really important that people should be able to self-identify, and you know, we maybe have taken for granted, you know, he, him, she, and so forth. So it's the fact that, you know, we are having to think about these things, and you know, it's raising that awareness as well, and it's what you feel comfortable with is what you identify with, you know. So if you want to say they, then that's fine, and it should be fine for everybody.
Can I just say also, like, looking at it from a slightly different angle, it's a bit like wearing a mask after you've been vaccinated for COVID, right? You do it to make other people more comfortable. So some people will never see that as an important in and of itself, but that's fine. You can't reach everyone, of course, but for people that can be reached, you wear masks for other people. I think it's easy enough to understand that you give your pronouns to make it easy for other people whose pronouns are not so clear cut, whether it's, they don't match the appearance of a he, him, or if they prefer using they pronouns or, some other pronouns. So.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, is to bear in mind that, it's quite hard when you get your activism head on, you think, right, I want to change things, but also be aware that you're not going to reach everybody, and some people won't change, and that's that's life, I think. But it is one of them things you're not going to get through to everybody, but it's the small chips away that will make the big differences.
And I guess to finish the Q&A, what would be the biggest changes you would like to see? We received this from Claire, so yeah, if anyone would like to start, what is the biggest change you would like to see?
More diverse partnerships, more diverse, judiciary, more diverse parliament. Like Parliament, they've made some inroads. Lord Chris Smith was saying the other day that they feel the glass ceiling has been smashed in Parliament, and maybe that's true, but I don't think there's any out LGBT members of cabinet. So, unfortunately, I think it is a numbers game, and I'm not coming in the sense of quota, but we just need more representation.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, Jay.
No, you.
No, go on. I was saying usually education, I've been wanting change in that for a long time. So I do a lot of women in tech, for example, and it's been very slow to evolve, very, very slow. Getting women into investment is very slow. So for the LGBTQ in schools, I know it's not perfect, but it's something. So again, education starting early, more talks, more people, that it's not about being gay talking. It's about inclusion. So rather than talking in a closed room, I want to talk more publicly about all the different things that go on, how we bring people together. So education for me, I just think we need to do more and more. And everyone needs to stop worrying about it. I don't want to offend anyone, but, about 10 years ago, bringing a lesbian and a gay man together, that was hard work in networking groups. Now it's more mixed, it's more inclusive. I would love to see more of that.
Yeah.
Go on, David.
Go on, Jay. I'll just get my point's also education. Having worked in education for a while, my partner in primary education there's a lot more movement needs to happen in particularly in mainstream education. The children are more aware than the staff. I would argue very often. They're more comfortable. They're more open. You read only recently about the head teacher coming out as gay, that sort of thing being a real headliner, rather than my partner, or occasionally some children might have seen him out with me in the community and have realised his partner's of the same sex, and they brought that up in the classroom, but it's still not a comfortable conversation because of the wider community and their maybe thoughts in terms of talking about family situations in the same way as maybe a heterosexual teacher might do that. So yeah, I think education, I'd like to see some movements with that.
Yeah, I'd like to echo all of those, and also throw in, I want to see people out there. The only way things are going to change is by being there. And we are there, but don't be afraid to put yourself out there, because you're all valued. You should all be involved in the movement towards a better time for everybody. So less fearlessness. No, more fearless.
Less fearfulness.
Less fearfulness. There you go. And just really put yourself out there, because that's the only way we're going to get change, is by showing these people we're not going to be put in a box. Put yourself out there. If you think, I want to be in cabinet one day, but I can't because I'm LGBTQ+, no, go for it. Just go for it. Just do it.
Perfect. That's a lovely way to end our Q&A. So thank you everyone for your time. And as I say, that brings us to the end. I just want to say your talks and your answers have not only been sort of inspiring and knowledgeable and insightful, but they've really provoked people and others to get involved and talk more about these issues. So yeah, thank you so much for being honest and open.
Can I just extend my thanks to you, Sophie, and the brand team for putting on this amazing event for LGBTQ+ History Month, and for the university. It's been a real positive step forward, and hope to see more of these events going forward as well.
And also for jumping in at the last minute too, unexpectedly.
It was my moment to shine. I knew it was. No, thank you. And as I say, thank you all so much for your talks. They were absolutely phenomenal. So that, as I say, brings us to the end. So if anyone would like to network with fellow guests, or potentially even speakers, or even find out more about the support or the services that we have at ULaw, you can visit the Expo booth. So if you're on desktop, on your left-hand side, there is a little icon, Expo. You can visit that. I believe, Jay, as you said, you have your own little booth, so feel free to go give a little hello to Jay. And as I say, from the University of Law and today's speakers, thank you so much for joining us at our Diversity Matters LGBTQ+ event, and have a great rest of your evening. Thank you so much again. Take care.